My family decided I should give up my inheritance because I didn't need it. They didn't expect me to explain why I wasn't worried. When my grandmother died, I grieved quietly. She was the only person in my family who never treated me like an afterthought. She listened when I spoke. She never asked why I wasn't married yet, or why I didn't own a house, or why I didn't seem to be progressing like everyone else. She once told me, "You don't advertise your life. That usually means you're doing fine." She was right. The rest of my family, though, had already moved on to the part they cared about most: the inheritance. My grandmother wasn't wealthy in a flashy way, but she was careful. Her house was paid off decades ago. She had investments, savings, and no debt. Everyone knew there would be money involved, and everyone had already decided how it should be divided. We gathered at my parents' house a few weeks after the funeral to talk things through. That was the phrase they used anyway. What they meant was negotiating. My aunt cried about medical expenses. My cousin talked about childcare costs. My brother mentioned his mortgage and how hard things had been lately. Everyone spoke as if their situation automatically mattered more. I stayed quiet. That was my mistake. At some point, my aunt said, "Well, obviously not everyone needs the same amount." My mother nodded. We should be practical. They started listing reasons people needed more: kids, debt, homes, struggles. Then my aunt said it, casually, like it was obvious. "You're doing okay. You don't really need this." I asked what she meant by okay. She smiled in that tight, polite way people do when they think they're being generous. "You live simply. No big expenses. You always have." My brother added, "You're not struggling like the rest of us." I realized then that they didn't know anything about my life. They just knew what I didn't show them. They told me they wanted to adjust the inheritance, not eliminate my share, just reduce it. To be fair, they said, the will itself was clear. My grandmother had divided everything equally among her grandchildren, but they'd already spoken to the executor. Apparently, adjustments could be made if everyone agreed. They slid the paperwork across the table and asked me to sign. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I asked one question. "When did you decide this?" My mother said, "We've talked about it for a while." I asked another. "Did you ever ask me about my finances before deciding I didn't need anything?" No one answered. So I told them. I explained that I had been working in a niche corner of tech for years, that I had equity in a company that was acquired quietly, that I lived the way I did because I liked it, not because I had to. I showed them numbers, not all of them, just enough. The reaction wasn't relief. It wasn't happiness. It was shock, followed immediately by discomfort. My aunt said, "Well, that changes things." My brother frowned and said, "So you've just been sitting on all that?" My mother asked why I'd never helped before. That question stunned me. Help with what? No one had ever asked me for help. They'd only assumed I couldn't offer it. Then the tone shifted. Suddenly it wasn't that I didn't need the inheritance. Now it was that I already had too much. My aunt said it would be unfair for me to receive the same amount when others were struggling. My cousin said my grandmother would have wanted the money to make a real difference. I reminded them that equal distribution was exactly what my grandmother had chosen. I refused to sign. Without my agreement, the adjustments were invalid. The executor confirmed it. The will would be executed as written. The fallout was quiet but sharp. I was called selfish, greedy, accused of changing once money was involved. I pointed out that I hadn't changed at all. I had simply stopped being convenient. The inheritance was distributed equally a few months later. I used part of mine to fund a scholarship in my grandmother's name. She had been passionate about education, especially for students who didn't have loud advocates. I invested the rest and moved on. Family gatherings are smaller now. Some relatives keep their distance. Others are polite but careful, like they're afraid of stepping on a boundary they didn't know existed before. But no one questions my right to what was left to me. and I know my grandmother would have approved. Not because I kept the money, but because, for once, I didn't let anyone decide my worth for me.